The lie of brokenness. How modern culture misunderstands pain somewhere along the way. You were told a lie, a soft, subtle lie, but a devastating one, that because you feel pain, because you wrestle with anxiety, grief, depression, fear, you must be broken. That if you're not always okay, something is wrong with you. It whispers. It hides in self-help slogans and social media smiles. It shows up in the silence of others who don't know how to respond to your sadness. It's there when people say, you just need to stay positive. You should be over this by now. Maybe something's wrong with you. And slowly, quietly, the message is received. Your pain is a problem. But what if that's not true? What if the presence of pain doesn't mean you're broken, but that you are alive, awake, and capable of transformation? Modern culture treats emotional pain like a malfunction, but many ancient traditions and the deeper streams of psychology see pain not as an enemy, but as a signal, a teacher, a sacred invitation. Pain is not the opposite of wholeness. Often, it is the very path toward it. But this is hard to hear when everything around you screams the opposite. We live in a society that worships optimization. If you're not productive, you feel worthless. If you're not happy, you're told to fix it. If you're not confident, people call you weak. We are told to wear masks, smile when you're crumbling, achieve more to feel worthy, drown the ache with noise, distractions, addictions. But beneath it all, pain remains, and because no one taught us how to face it, we assume it means we're defective. But let's ask an honest question. What if emotional pain is not a failure of the soul, but the signal that your soul is still functioning? Think about physical pain for a moment. If your hand touches fire, pain isn't a flaw, it's a warning. It protects you. It wakes you up. It says, something here needs attention. Emotional pain is no different. It is your inner world crying out for care, a grief that needs to be named, a truth that's been suppressed, a boundary that's been violated, a dream that's been forgotten. It may hurt deeply, but that hurt is not a sign of your brokenness. It's the voice of your becoming. C.S. Lewis said it this way: pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So maybe the question isn't, how do I get rid of this pain? Maybe the question is, what is this pain trying to reveal? Because pain, when ignored, becomes poison. But pain, when faced with honesty and courage, becomes a guide. You are not broken because you feel deeply. You are not broken because you struggle. You are not broken because you're still carrying wounds from years ago. You are human, and your humanity is not a flaw. It's the ground in which meaning is planted. In the next chapter, we'll look at how pain, especially emotional pain, has the power to transform your identity, not by erasing your wounds, but by helping you integrate them. But for now, begin here. You are not broken. You are being called. The meaning beneath the pain, what your emotions are trying to tell you. We are taught to suppress, ignore, or fight our emotions, especially the difficult ones. Sadness, get over it. Anger, calm down. Fear, be stronger. Grief, move on. Shame, just love yourself more. But what if emotions aren't enemies to conquer, but messengers carrying truths we haven't yet heard? Psychologists like Carl Jung believe that emotions, especially the painful ones, are not irrational defects, but signals from the unconscious. They rise when something deep inside us is being ignored, repressed, or misunderstood. C.S. Lewis, too, approached emotional pain with honesty rather than denial. In A Grief Observed, he writes not as a man with all the answers, but as a soul undone by loss, wrestling with God, naming every ache without filter. This, perhaps, is the first key to healing. Naming what hurts, not denying it, not dressing it up in spiritual language, not pretending it doesn't matter, but facing it raw and unfiltered, because pain has a purpose. Sadness often means something precious has been lost. It reminds us that we are capable of love. It calls us to honor what mattered. Anger can be a sign that a boundary has been crossed, that our integrity or values are under threat. It calls us to protect what is sacred within us. Fear is not always weakness. Sometimes it's wisdom. It warns us of danger, calls us to prepare, or points to the gap between who we are and who we long to become. Shame, though heavy, is often the cry of a soul that fears disconnection. It says, am I still lovable, even here? When held with compassion, it can guide us back to vulnerability and belonging. And grief is love enduring loss. It's proof that something was beautiful enough to miss. These emotions are not problems. They are proof that you are deeply alive. But when we suppress them, we disconnect from our inner truth. We lose the chance to hear what the pain is asking us to become. Think of emotional pain as the language of the soul. When words fail, the body weeps, the heart tightens, the breath shortens. Your pain is speaking, not in sentences, but in sensations, in memories that resurface, in tears that come without explanation, in the way your chest aches when you pass a place that once held joy. These are not malfunctions, they are invitations. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung said. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to to avoid facing their own soul. But you're here, listening, facing it. That is courage. It means you're ready to ask, what is this pain showing me about who I really am? Often, emotional pain reveals the gap between our true self and the life we're living. It exposes what no longer fits, the role we've been playing, the silence we've been holding, the truth we've been afraid to name. And that's where healing begins, not with fixing yourself, but with listening to yourself. Because the pain you feel today may be the part of you that wants to grow. And unless you turn toward it, you'll never hear what it's trying to say. In the next part, we'll explore how emotional pain doesn't just reveal who you are, but actually becomes the very material through which your transformation can unfold. You are not broken. You are becoming. The alchemy of pain. How suffering transforms the self in ancient times. There were people called alchemists. They devoted their lives to a mystical science, turning base metals into gold. But alchemy was never just about physical transformation. It was a spiritual metaphor, to turn something impure into something precious, to move from the lower self to the higher, from fragmentation to wholeness, from raw suffering to meaning. And whether they knew it or not, every human being on the path of healing becomes an alchemist, because that is what emotional pain is calling you to do. Not to get rid of the pain, but to transmute it. To allow suffering to break you open, not to destroy you, but to uncover the gold buried beneath. Carl Jung called this process the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are. And this journey always begins with confrontation, with shadow, with wounds, with grief and uncertainty and loss. But here's the paradox. You don't become whole by avoiding what hurts. You become whole by walking through it with open eyes and a courageous heart. The truth will set you free, said Jesus. But first it will shatter you, added many of his followers. So what does this process look like? It often begins with disorientation. A collapse of who you thought you were. The job, the relationship, the belief system, the identity falls apart. And in the aftermath, emotional pain floods in. This is not failure. It is initiation. You are being invited into deeper truth. The false self, the one that lived for approval, avoided discomfort, and ran from fear, must die, so that the true self can rise. In this space, grief becomes a purifier. It washes away what no longer serves you. Shame, when held in compassion, reveals your longing for connection. It teaches you tenderness toward yourself and others. Fear becomes a compass. It points toward the parts of your life that are calling for courage. Anger becomes sacred fire. It shows you what you stand for, what must no longer be tolerated in silence. This is the alchemy of pain, not the elimination of feeling, but the transformation of feeling into wisdom. And the key to this alchemy is not perfection, it's presence. To stay with the wound, to breathe through the ache, to speak the truth you've long silenced. Because transformation cannot happen at the surface. It happens in the depths. C.S. Lewis, who knew grief intimately, once wrote, "Hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny." And what is that destiny? Not external success, but internal alignment, integrity, peace, clarity, the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need to prove anything, because it's rooted in something real. The pain you carry is not your disqualification. It is your initiation. Not everyone walks this path, but you are, and that means something sacred is unfolding in you. In the next section, we'll explore how healing doesn't mean becoming someone different, but returning to someone you've always been, underneath the pain, because you were never broken. You were simply becoming whole. Returning to wholeness, reclaiming the self beneath the wound. What if healing isn't about becoming someone new, but about coming home to who you really are? What if the pain you've carried hasn't been a detour from your path, but the very road back to your true self? We often think of healing as fixing something, repairing what's broken, covering over the cracks. But the truth is far more beautiful. You are not a shattered object in need of gluing back together. You are a soul being uncovered. And emotional pain, when faced with courage, becomes the tool that reveals what has always been there. Beneath the anxiety, beneath the grief, beneath the years of hiding and trying and surviving, is a self that has never been damaged, only buried. Modern psychology calls this the authentic self. Spiritual traditions might call it the imago Dei, image of God in you, a place of clarity, strength, creativity, and connection. But this self is often covered by layers of pain. The childhood wound that said you weren't enough, the betrayal that made you stop trusting, the silence that taught you to stay small, the fear that said, "Don't be too much." These wounds shape the false self, the self that performs, that hides, that defends, that tries to be what others want, just to feel safe. And when that false self starts to crumble off and through emotional pain, it feels like everything is falling apart. But what's really happening is sacred. You're returning to wholeness, not by erasing the past, not by pretending the wounds didn't happen, but by integrating them. You look at the part of you that's afraid and you listen to it instead of pushing it away. You hold the inner child who still aches and tell them, you're safe now. You stop judging your sadness and begin to let it speak. You stop calling yourself broken and begin to call yourself becoming. This is not easy work. It is slow. It is often painful. It requires presence, compassion, and sometimes guidance. But it is the work of transformation. And one day, almost without realizing it, you begin to feel something new. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer fear your feelings. You begin to trust your intuition. You speak more honestly. You rest more deeply. You feel more grounded, and when the storms come, as they always do, you no longer collapse because you've found something unshakable within. You've returned to the place where God whispers, not in noise or answers, but in presence. Be still and know that I am God. That stillness is not just an outer silence. It's the inner quiet that comes when you are no longer running from yourself. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. And that soul, your soul, has never been broken. It has been buried under pain, yes, but now it's rising. And that is the miracle of emotional healing. Not that it changes who you are, but that it brings you back to who you've always been." In the final section, we'll explore what life begins to look like when you no longer live from fear, from shame, or from wounds, but from meaning, strength, and the quiet confidence of wholeness. Living from wholeness, how pain prepares you for a purposeful life. When you stop seeing yourself as broken, something powerful begins to shift. You start to live not from the wound, but from the wisdom the wound gave you. The anxiety that once overwhelmed you becomes a signal, not a sentence. The grief that once hollowed you now opens your heart to others' pain. The shame that once defined you now reminds you to walk with humility and gentleness. This is what it means to live from wholeness. Not that the pain is gone, but that it no longer controls you. You are no longer just surviving. You are creating. You begin to find your voice, to set boundaries, to speak the truth, even when it trembles. You begin to recognize beauty again, not because life is perfect, but because your heart has been softened by what it endured. Wholeness is not a finish line. It's a way of walking. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows what they've been through and no longer needs to hide it. It's the strength to love others without needing them to fix your pain. It's the ability to be present, not as a mask, but as a witness to your own becoming. C.S. Lewis believed that suffering, when embraced with honesty and hope, could be redeemed. That through it, God was not harming us but healing us, not crushing us but reforming us into vessels capable of deeper love, deeper truth, and deeper joy. Hardships prepare ordinary people, he wrote, for an extraordinary destiny. And maybe your pain, the very thing you thought disqualified you from living a meaningful life, is what is actually preparing you for it. Because now, when you sit with someone who is suffering, you don't rush to fix them. You know what it's like to ache. You become a safe place, a calm presence, a living example that healing is possible. This is how pain becomes purpose, not through productivity or performance, but through presence. When you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is life trying to teach me?" you move from victimhood to authorship. You stop carrying pain as a weight and begin carrying it as wisdom. And slowly, you find your path. It might be helping others. It might be creating art. It might be raising children with more tenderness than you received. It might simply be the quiet radiance of a person who has faced the dark and chosen not to harden, but to become light. This is your story now. Not a story of brokenness, but of transformation. So walk gently with yourself. Speak kindly to the parts of you still healing. Honor your scars not as reminders of pain, but as proof that healing happened here. You were never broken. You were becoming whole. And now that wholeness is alive in you, ready to move through the world with love, courage, and meaning.